Hi, my name is Tushar, and in this video I'll be showing you how to do cinematic color grading from scratch by taking you in depth through my own color grading process. And along the way I'll be sharing my personal tips and tricks so that you can achieve cinematic color grades easily. So make sure to watch it till the end. So we'll start off this tutorial with the sample clip. And before we jump in, we need to make sure that we're working in the right color space. To do that, click on the gear icon in the bottom right and go over to the color management tab. I'm working in the color space of DaVinci Wide Gamut and DaVinci Intermediate, while my output color space is Rec. 709 Gamma 2.4. The color science I'm using is DaVinci via GB, so make sure you have these settings dialed in. Now comes the first step in the entire color grading process, which is color correction. After color correction, we then move to creatively grade our footage. What I'll do is I'll add a bunch of nodes by pressing Alt plus S, and then I'll start naming them. The first one is CST in, followed by exposure, white balance, contrast, saturation, and a few masking nodes. I'll name them as M1, M2, and M3. And finally, CST out and LUT. This last node is where you can apply your LUTs if you're using any, but I won't be using any LUTs for this tutorial. So in the first node, which is CST in, I'll go to the effects panel and search for color space transform and add it to both CST in and CST out. What this does is convert our footage from log footage to a standard Rec. 709 Gamma 2.4 color space, giving us a solid starting point for the color grading process. In the CST in node, I'll set the input color space and gamma to Sony S Gamut 3.cine and Sony S Log 3, and the output color space I'll set it to DaVinci Wide Gamut and DaVinci Intermediate. Now, our original footage is converted from a log color space to a standard working color space. This isn't exactly how the footage will look straight off the camera, but the main advantage of using a log color profile is that it gives us the maximum dynamic range and preserved details, the highlights and shadows. So that's why I always prefer to shoot in log whenever my camera allows it. Next, we'll start by correcting the exposure. And by looking at this, I can see that it's slightly overexposed. To fix this, I'll mainly use the lift and gamma wheels. The lift wheel primarily affects the shadows, while the gamma wheels affect the midtones. I only use the gain wheel when it's absolutely necessary, because I've noticed that it's very easy to accidentally overexpose highlights when using it. So I generally try to avoid that. This is a trick that I learned from one of my favorite filmmakers. His name is Raylin Joey. So this is the tip number 1. He turns the saturation all the way down and adjusts exposure as if the shot was like a black and white image. This makes it much easier to accurately judge exposure, and honestly it's been like a game changer for me. So that's exactly what I'll do right now. And you have to be patient with color grading because there's a lot of trial and error involved. Many people think that it's a one-click process, which obviously isn't true. So just be a little patient with this process. And looking at this now, I think I'm pretty happy with the exposure. Just make sure you don't crush your shadows. You definitely want to avoid that. Now we'll move on to white balance. Looking at this shot, I can see that the white balance is already pretty decent. I'll make a few small tweaks using the gain and gamma wheel. You can also use the temperature slider over here to correct the white balance, but personally I prefer using the color wheels because they give you much more control over the image. And here comes the tip number 2. Make sure you have your vector scope turned on. This gives you a very clear understanding of where colors are sitting. If they're close to the center, like in my case, then your white balance is already in a good place. So this is the overall color correction process. What we've done so far is corrected the exposure and white balance of the clip. Now we can move on to the creative color grading process. So for this shot, I want a more dramatic bluish look with a lot of blues in the shadows. This works really well with the kind of travel film that I'm creating. So in the white balance node, I'll start by pushing the shadows towards blue using the left wheel. Initially I intentionally push it a little too far, then slowly I pull it back. At the same time I introduce some of the opposite colors using the gamma wheels to preserve some of the original colors. If I don't do this, the image starts to look very unnatural. So for the next few minutes I'll just experiment and see what kind of results I can get here. Now if you look at the image and the vector scope, you can see that there's a lot of magenta or pink tones in the highlights. To fix this, I simply push the opposite colors using the gain wheel. And there you go. It's starting to look so much better already. We're getting this moody bluish cinematic feel. And if I turn these nodes off by pressing Ctrl+D, this is how the shot looked before. And this is how it looked right now. So at this point I'm pretty happy with the look. I might come back later and make a few small tweaks, but for now I think this works really well. And here's the tip number 3. If you're serious about color grading, try to avoid grading your footage in one single session. What often happens is that your eyes get used to seeing the colors and you end up pushing them much further than you originally intended. So once you feel satisfied with the grade, step away from it and come back later after some time and revisit it. You'll almost realize that you pushed the colors more than necessary. Trust me, you'll thank me later for this step. Now we move on to the saturation node. Personally, I don't add a lot of saturation to my shots, but for grades like this, where I've already pushed the colors quite a bit, I like to add just a subtle amount of saturation back in. I don't do this using the regular saturation slider right over here. Instead, I'll use the color slice tab and very carefully adjust the saturation from there. And I really mean carefully, because it's very easy to go over the top while using this control. And if I toggle before and after, this is how the shot looks now. I'm generally really happy with the grade. If I was short on time, I could honestly stop right here and move on to the next shots. But since I have more time on my hands right now, we can push this a little further and do a few more things. Now we're moving on to one of my favorite parts about color grading, which is mask and power windows. These 3 nodes, M1, M2 and M3, are created specifically for this purpose, and this brings us to tip number 4. A lot of people use mask to add like a simple vignette and call it a day. But what I like to do is that I use power windows to add extra emphasis on specific areas of the image. This helps guide the viewer's eye towards the most important parts of the frame, like in this case the subject's face. Starting with M1, I'll use a circular power window. I'll feather this quite a bit and place it over this area to slightly darken this portion of the image so that it doesn't distract the viewer from the main subject's face. I'll use the gamma wheel to slightly push it towards the left to darken this area. And I'll do the same on the other side using the M2 node. So this is how the image looks after M1 and M2, and here's a quick before and after comparison. And for M3, I feel like brightening up the subject's face. So what I'll do is I'll add a circular power window over her face and increase the gamma slightly to brighten it and lower the lift to add a bit of contrast. If I do a full before and after of the image, we started with this, our original log footage. Then we converted it to Rec 709, corrected the exposure, adjusted the white balance and saturation, and finally refined the image using these M1, M2 and M3 nodes, which had power windows in it. So this was the final result. I really hope you found this video helpful and learned something valuable. And if you did, make sure to follow me on my Instagram, I've started posting regularly over there and you can connect with me directly. I regularly share filmmaking tips, behind the scenes content, and insights into my creative workflow. So make sure to follow me over there. And if you made it this far, comment, "We love color grading," and I'll see you in my next one.